Commander Zethkar pressed his scaled hand against the viewing port of his patrol vessel, watching the dark shape drift through the void ahead. The object tumbled slowly, catching starlight on its damaged hull. Metal gleamed dull silver against the black of space, and strange markings covered its surface in patterns he had never seen before. "Sir, we should move away," said his second officer, Vostai. The younger alien's voice carried a tremor of fear. "The readings are clear. That ship belongs to them." Zethkar turned his large amber eyes toward his crew. They all wore the same expression of worry and confusion. These were good soldiers, trained for decades in the service of the hegemony. Yet the sight of this single broken vessel had reduced them to nervous children. "Them?" Zethkar asked, though he already knew the answer. The ship's design was unmistakable, even damaged as it was. The smooth curves, the primitive but somehow elegant construction. The way it seemed to flow like water frozen in metal. Only one species built ships like this. "Humans, sir." Vostai whispered the word like a curse. Zethkar had served in the hegemony fleet for 40 years. He had fought pirates, explored dead worlds, and faced down creatures that could eat a battleship whole. But he had never seen a human ship before. Few beings alive had. The Galactic Council had made sure of that. "Sir, we need to report this and leave immediately," pressed Chief Engineer Mektron. Her 6 arms moved nervously, adjusting controls that did not need adjusting. "The protocols are clear. Any contact with human technology must be reported to the Council at once." "And then what?" Zethkar asked. "They send a cleanup crew to destroy the evidence." Another mystery swept under the cosmic carpet. He studied the drifting ship again. "When was the last time any of you actually saw a human?" The bridge fell silent. Finally, young Navigation Officer Zedek spoke up. "My grandfather claimed he saw one once, sir. But that was before the Prohibition. Before my grandfather was even born, actually. I think it was just a story." Zethkar nodded slowly. "That was the problem. For 300 years, humans had been forbidden, not just contact with them, but any mention of them outside official channels. The younger generation knew nothing except that humans were dangerous and to be avoided at all costs. But dangerous how and why?" "Sir," called sensor operator Lixara from her station, "I'm detecting energy signatures from the human vessel. Very weak, but consistent with life support systems." "Life support?" Zethkar's hearts began beating faster. "You mean they're alive in there?" "Possible, sir. The readings suggest some kind of preservation system. Like the emergency pods we use for long-term storage." Zethkar made his decision. "Tractor beam." "Bring it aboard, sir." Vostai stepped forward, his blue skin paling. "The regulations strictly forbid." "The regulations forbid contact with active human civilization," Zethkar interrupted. "This appears to be a derelict vessel with possible survivors in distress. As officers of the hegemony, we have a duty to render aid." It was a thin excuse, and everyone on the bridge knew it. But Zethkar was the commander, and his crew followed orders. Within an hour, the human ship sat in their cargo bay, sealed behind multiple containment fields. Zethkar led the investigation team personally. As they approached the alien vessel, he could see details that the sensors had missed. The ship was old but not ancient. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections showed signs of hasty repair work. This ship had seen battle. "Energy readings are definitely coming from this section," reported Mektron, pointing to a bulge in the ship's side. "If those are survival pods, the occupants might still be viable." They cut through the ship's outer hull with careful precision. Inside, they found a sight that made even Zethkar pause. The ship was clearly built for beings much smaller than most galactic species. Everything was sized for creatures roughly 2/3 the height of an average hegemony citizen. The technology was strange too. Not primitive exactly, but different. It worked on principles that seemed almost familiar, yet followed no design philosophy he recognized. In the ship's central chamber, they found them. 3 cylindrical pods, each containing a figure suspended in some kind of preservation fluid. 2 adults and what appeared to be a juvenile. They looked exactly like the ancient descriptions, bipedal, with pale skin and sparse hair, wearing simple clothing. "Humans, by the void," whispered Lixara. "They're real." Zethkar studied the sleeping faces through the transparent pod walls. They looked so ordinary, so harmless. Where was the terrible threat that had caused the entire galaxy to ban contact with their species? "Sir," Mektron called from a nearby console, I think I can read their language. The ship's computer has translation protocols, and they're surprisingly compatible with our systems. According to this, these three have been in suspended animation for 18 months. Their ship suffered critical damage during something called a mining accident, and they activated emergency preservation. What are their names? Zethkar asked. Mectrin consulted the display. Dr. Sarah Chen, Marcus Chen, and Lily Chen. The adults are listed as exobiologist and systems engineer. The child is 8 years old by their counting. A family, Zethkar said softly. Somehow that made them seem even more harmless. Can we revive them safely? The pods are designed for emergency revival, Mectrin confirmed. Their medical systems are actually quite sophisticated. I think our medical bay could handle the process. Sir, Vositai said urgently, we cannot do this. If the Council discovers we have awakened humans aboard a hegemony vessel, the Council will never know, Zethkar replied, unless someone tells them. He looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they were also curious. None of them had ever seen a living human before. None of them really knew why their species was forbidden. We will revive them, Zethkar decided. We will learn what they know about their ship's accident. We will provide medical aid if needed, and then we will decide what to do next. As his crew began preparing the medical bay, Zethkar remained in the cargo hold, staring at the sleeping humans. 300 years of prohibition, 300 years of fear and secrecy, and here were three ordinary beings who had been caught in a simple accident, floating helplessly through space. What had humans done that was so terrible? And more importantly, what would happen when these three woke up and found themselves surrounded by aliens who had been taught to fear their very existence? Zethkar was about to find out, and something deep in his gut told him that nothing would ever be the same again. The first thing Dr. Sarah Chen noticed when she woke up was that gravity felt wrong. Not absent like it would be in freefall, but different, lighter than Earth standard, with a subtle directional pull that her inner ear couldn't quite process. The second thing she noticed was that the ceiling above her was too high and made of some kind of metal she didn't recognize. The third thing she noticed was the face looking down at her. It definitely wasn't human. Sarah's training kicked in before panic could set in. As an exobiologist, she had spent years imagining this moment, first contact with alien intelligence. Though she had to admit she'd always pictured it happening under more controlled circumstances. The alien face was remarkable. Reptilian features, but with large, intelligent amber eyes that held genuine concern, scaled skin in shades of green and brown, and a mouth that seemed capable of complex expression. When it spoke, the words came through some kind of translation device. Dr. Chen, can you understand me? Please do not be alarmed. You are safe. Sarah tried to sit up and immediately felt dizzy. Strong but gentle hands helped steady her. She looked around and saw more aliens, different species by the look of them. One had blue skin and moved with fluid grace. Another had 6 arms and was monitoring some kind of medical equipment. A third had features that reminded her of a cross between a cat and a bird. Where am I? Sarah managed to ask. Aboard the hegemony patrol vessel Steady Course, replied the first alien. I am Commander Zethkar. We found your ship drifting in space and detected life signs. We revived you from your emergency suspension. Memory flooded back. The mining station. The explosion. Marcus shouting for her to get Lily to the pods. The desperate hope that someone, anyone, might find them. My family, she said urgently. My husband Marcus and my daughter Lily, they're fine, Zethkar assured her. We revived them first, actually. Your daughter adapted to consciousness much more quickly than our medical staff expected. She is currently in our observation lounge asking our navigator approximately 700 questions about how our ship works. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. That sounded exactly like Lily. Dr. Chen, Zethkar continued, I must ask you something important. Are there others of your kind searching for you? Will anyone come looking? Sarah shook her head. The mining station was remote. Our emergency beacon was damaged in the explosion. As far as anyone knows, we're just gone. She saw something that might have been relief cross the alien commander's features, though it was hard to read his expressions. Commander, called the 6-armed alien from her medical station, the human's vital signs are excellent. Her species shows remarkable adaptability to environmental changes. Thank you, Chief Medical Officer Yilnara, Zethkar replied. Then to Sarah, "If you feel ready, would you like to see your family?" The reunion took place in what Zethkar called the observation lounge. Marcus was already on his feet, examining the alien technology with the focused intensity Sarah knew well. He looked up as she entered, relief flooding his face. "Sarah, thank God. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been asleep for a year and a half," she replied, hugging him tightly. "Which apparently I have." "Mom!" Lily bounced over to her, completely at ease despite being surrounded by aliens. "Did you know their ship uses rotating gravity drums instead of gravitational generators? And their navigation system uses quantum entanglement for real-time positioning. Officer Zedek has been showing me everything." Sarah looked at the young alien who was apparently Zedek. He seemed bemused but not upset by Lily's enthusiasm. "Your daughter learns very quickly," Zedek said. "She mastered our basic mathematical notation in less than an hour." "She's always been good with numbers," Marcus said proudly. Then, more seriously, "Sarah, we need to talk about our situation." Commander Zethkar gestured for them to sit around a low table. The furniture was designed for beings larger than humans, but it was surprisingly comfortable. "Your husband has raised some important questions," Zethkar began. "It seems that contact between our species has been restricted for some time." "Restricted how?" Sarah asked. The aliens exchanged glances. Finally, Zethkar spoke. "For 300 years, contact with humans has been forbidden by the Galactic Council. Your species is considered dangerous." Marcus laughed. "Dangerous? Have you seen us? We're barely out of our own solar system. Our most advanced weapon is nuclear fusion, and we only figured that out 50 years ago." "That is what puzzles us," admitted Zethkar. "None of my crew understands why humans are forbidden. The knowledge was suppressed." An alarm began sounding throughout the ship. Zethkar immediately stood, his hand moving to a communication device. "Commander," came an urgent voice. "Long-range sensors are detecting 3 vessels on intercept course. Configuration matches Varaki pirate raiders." "How long until they reach us?" Zethkar asked. 18 minutes, sir." Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her. "What's a Varaki pirate raider?" "Trouble," Zethkar replied grimly. "They're scavengers who prey on lone ships. And our patrol vessel is not designed for heavy combat." "What can we do to help?" Sarah asked. The question seemed to surprise every alien in the room. "Help?" repeated Zethkar. "You saved our lives," Marcus said simply. "Of course we want to help. But you are civilians. And humans. And we have no idea what Another alarm cut him off. This one was different, more urgent. "Commander!" came the voice from the bridge. "The raiders have just fired some kind of jamming pulse. Our main engines are losing power, and navigation systems are failing." Zethkar's expression darkened. "They want to disable us, not destroy us. They mean to board and take whatever they can carry." Marcus was already moving toward the door. "Show me your engine room." "Marcus, what are you thinking?" Sarah called after him. "The same thing you are," he replied without stopping. "Time to earn our rescue." What followed was 18 minutes of controlled chaos. Marcus disappeared into the ship's engineering sections with Chief Engineer Mectrin, while Sarah found herself working alongside the medical staff to prepare for potential casualties. Lily, to everyone's surprise, ended up on the bridge helping with calculations. "The human engineer has done something impossible," Mectrin announced over the intercom. "He has rerouted power through systems I didn't even know could carry that kind of load. Engine efficiency is now at 120%. "That's impossible," muttered the navigation officer. "Tell that to my readings," Mectrin replied. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself coordinating the medical response with an efficiency that impressed even herself. She had worked with diverse teams before, but never with different species entirely. Yet somehow it felt natural. "Dr. Chen," asked Yelnara, "how did you know to suggest that approach to treating plasma burns?" "Basic tissue damage response," Sarah replied. "The principles are probably universal for carbon-based life. When the pirates arrived, they found a ship that should have been dead in space, instead moving with impossible speed and agility. The raiders managed to fire 3 shots before the patrol vessel vanished into hyperspace, leaving them behind." "How?" demanded Vostai when they dropped out of hyperspace an hour later. "Our engines were completely disabled. Your husband bypassed 6 safety systems and rerouted primary power through the auxiliary waste management network," Mectrin explained to Sarah. "It should have destroyed half the ship, but it didn't," Sarah pointed out. No, admitted Mectrin. Somehow it worked perfectly. On the bridge, Lily was explaining her calculations to an amazed Zedek. See, if you adjust the hyperspace entry vector by just 3 degrees, you can reduce the power requirement by 15%. The math is really simple once you account for the space-time curvature. Simple, Zedek repeated weakly. Commander Zethkar stood in the center of it all, watching his crew interact with the 3 humans. In less than a day, they had gone from fear and suspicion to something else. Respect, admiration. Commander, Vostai approached him quietly. I need to ask you something. Are we absolutely certain these are the same humans that were forbidden? Zethkar watched as Marcus explained some modification he had made to their power systems, while Mectrin listened with rapt attention. He watched Sarah coordinating medical supplies with Yilnara, as if they had worked together for years. He watched little Lily showing Zedek mathematical concepts that made the young officer's eyes light up with understanding. No, Zethkar said slowly. I'm beginning to think we're not certain about anything at all. The distress signal reached Admiral Korath's command ship while he was reviewing casualty reports from the latest pirate suppression operation. His aide, a nervous young Thraxian named Bektul, approached his command chair with obvious reluctance. Admiral, Bektul said carefully, we have received a priority alpha alert from the Hegemony Council. Korath's ancient eyes, clouded with age but still sharp with intelligence, fixed on the aide. At 340 years old, Korath was one of the oldest beings still in active service. More importantly, he was one of the few who remembered the time before the Prohibition. What kind of priority alpha? Korath asked, though something in his gut already knew the answer. Human contact, sir. A patrol vessel found survivors. The words hit Korath like a physical blow. He felt his secondary heart skip a beat, and his clawed hands gripped the armrests of his chair hard enough to leave marks in the metal. Survivors? He whispered. Yes, sir. The patrol vessel's steady course under Commander Zethkar reported finding a derelict human ship with 3 living occupants. The Council has authorized full containment protocols. Korath was already moving, his old body moving faster than it had in decades. Signal the fleet. Emergency mobilization. All available ships. Sir, the Council only authorized a row. The Council doesn't understand, Korath snapped. How many ships does Zethkar have? Just his patrol vessel, sir. A medium-class exploration ship with minimal defensive capabilities. Then he's already dead, and he just doesn't know it yet. Korath's voice carried a weight of certainty that chilled everyone on the bridge. Signal Admiral Telvos. Tell her to bring the suppression fleet. The entire suppression fleet? Sir, that's 47 ships. Surely for 3 humans are. Korath turned to face his aide, and Bektul stepped back involuntarily. The old admiral's expression was one of absolute terror. You don't understand, boy. None of you understand. 3 humans aren't 3 individuals. They're 3 points of infection. And if they've been in contact with Zethkar's crew for more than a few hours, Korath's voice trailed off. We may already be too late. 2 hours later, Korath's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the sector where the steady course had last been reported. They found empty space. No sign of them, sir, reported the sensor operator, but we're detecting hyperspace wake patterns. Multiple jumps, erratic course changes. He's running, Korath said with something that might have been approval. Smart boy, but it won't help him. Admiral, came a voice from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission from the steady course. Put it through. Commander Zethkar's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. Admiral Korath, I know why you're here. Do you, Commander? Do you really understand what you've done? I've rescued 3 sentient beings from certain death, Zethkar replied. Beings who have done nothing but help my crew in every situation we've encountered. Korath felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was already happening. He could hear it in Zethkar's voice, that subtle change in tone, the way he spoke about the humans with unconscious respect and admiration. Commander, I am ordering you to power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. This is not a negotiation. I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral. Can't, or won't. Both, Zethkar said simply. Admiral, I've read the historical records. I know humans were banned 300 years ago, but no one will tell me why. What did they do that was so terrible? Korath stared at the screen for a long moment. How could he explain? How could he make this young commander understand the true horror of what humans represented? They made us better. Korath said finally. The words hung in the air like an accusation. I don't understand, Zethkar said. No, Korath agreed sadly. You don't, and that's exactly the problem. The transmission ended. Korath turned to his tactical officer. Begin pursuit, full speed, and signal all other ships in the sector. I want every exit point blocked. Sir, the tactical officer said hesitantly. Our orders were to contain and retrieve. Are we authorized to use lethal force against a hegemony vessel? Korath's laugh was bitter and cold. Son, in about 6 hours, that won't be a hegemony vessel anymore. It will be something much more dangerous. The chase began in earnest. The steady course was fast for a patrol ship, but it was no match for a fleet of military vessels. However, Zethkar proved to be a remarkably cunning opponent. He led them through asteroid fields, solar radiation storms, and nebulae that made sensor tracking difficult. How is he managing this? Demanded Captain Veltara from the heavy cruiser Relentless. His ship's navigation system should be completely overloaded by the course changes he's making. He's getting help, Korath said grimly. They're helping him. Meanwhile, aboard the steady course, exactly that was happening. Lily Chen stood at the navigation console beside Officer Zedek, her small fingers flying across controls that had been designed for beings 3 times her size. If we adjust our vector here, she said, pointing to a 3-dimensional display, we can use the gravity well of that gas giant to slingshot around the moon field. They'll have to split their formation to follow us. That maneuver would require calculations that take our computer core 15 minutes to process. Zedek protested. I already did them, Lily replied, handing him a datapad covered with mathematical equations. See? Zedek stared at the calculations, his large eyes growing wider. Not only were they correct, they were elegant in their simplicity. A solution that their best navigation computers would have taken hours to find, solved by an 8-year-old human in her head. In the engine room, Marcus Chen was performing similar miracles. The ship's power systems were running at efficiency levels that Chief Engineer Mectrin had thought were theoretical maximums. This is impossible, Mectrin muttered, watching the readouts. You're pushing our reactors beyond their design specifications. They should have overloaded hours ago. They would have, Marcus agreed, if we were using them the way they were designed to be used. But sometimes you have to think outside the design parameters. But the safety margins, are suggestions, not laws of physics, Marcus interrupted gently. Your engineers built these systems with much wider tolerances than they admitted. Probably because they were scared of pushing boundaries. Mectrin watched this human, this supposedly dangerous being, work with technology he had never seen before, improving it through pure intuition and creativity. And she realized something that made her feel slightly sick. Marcus was right about the safety margins. Her own people had built those systems to be much more capable than they had ever dared to use them. On the bridge, Dr. Sarah Chen was working with the communications officer to monitor the pursuing fleet's transmissions. They're coordinating through a tactical network, she explained to Commander Zethkar. But the network has vulnerabilities. If we transmitted a signal on the right frequency, we could cause interference. That would be an act of war against other hegemony ships, Vostai protested. Not if we're just trying to communicate, Sarah replied. We send them a message explaining our position. If it happens to interfere with their tactical coordination, that's an unintended side effect. Zethkar looked at her suspiciously. Dr. Chen, that's a very sophisticated understanding of military communications for a civilian exobiologist. Sarah smiled. I may have studied more than just biology in my younger days. The message they sent was simple. A recording of the human family explaining their situation, asking for understanding and pleading for a chance to prove their peaceful intentions. But Sarah was right about the side effects. The signal caused enough interference to disrupt the fleet's coordination for nearly an hour. Clever, Admiral Korath admitted when his communications officer explained what had happened. Very clever. They're not just helping with navigation and engineering. They're thinking strategically. Sir, reported the sensor operator. The steady course has just dropped out of hyperspace near the Colic system, but there's something else. 3 more ships have just appeared on our sensors. They're moving to intercept. Korath felt his blood turn to ice. Identify those ships. Varaki pirates, sir. The same group that attacked the steady course 2 days ago. No, Korath said quietly. Not attacked, tested, he understood now. The humans hadn't just escaped the pirates. They had somehow turned the encounter into an opportunity to gauge their pursuers' capabilities. Now they were using that information. "Admiral," called the tactical officer, "the pirates are hailing us. They're demanding we leave the system." "Since when do pirates make demands of a hegemony fleet?" "Since someone convinced them they could win," Korath replied. He studied the tactical display, watching as the steady course moved to a position behind the pirate ships. "Look at the formation. The humans aren't hiding behind the pirates. They're supporting them." As if to prove his point, the pirates suddenly began moving with a coordination and tactical sophistication that their species had never demonstrated before. Their attack patterns were brilliant, forcing the hegemony ships to scatter and lose their advantage of numbers. "How are they doing this?" demanded Captain Veltara over the communication link. Korath watched as 3 human civilians somehow turned a desperate flight into a tactical masterpiece, convincing pirates to fight alongside them and a hegemony crew to abandon everything they had been taught. "They're doing what they've always done," he said. Sofa, the council chamber on Terminus Station, had not been used for a full assembly in over 50 years. Ancient seats designed for dozens of different species rose in concentric circles around a central platform. Today, only 12 of those seats were occupied, and the beings sitting in them represented the last survivors of the galaxy's darkest hour. Admiral Korath stood at the center of the chamber, his aged frame dwarfed by the massive space around him. Behind him, a holographic display showed the current position of the steady course and the ships that had been pursuing it. Red dots marked unsuccessful interception attempts. Blue lines showed the increasingly erratic path the human ship had taken through known space. 3 individuals, said Counselor Vexithara, her ancient voice echoing in the chamber. 3 humans have evaded 47 military vessels for 6 days. They have convinced a hegemony crew to commit mutiny. They have negotiated military alliances with pirate factions, and they have done this while providing humanitarian aid to disaster victims in 2 separate systems. "The humanitarian aid is what worries me most," admitted Counselor Zarketh. "Word is spreading. Other ships are beginning to respond to their distress calls offering assistance." "Of course they are," said High Counselor Ithmoran from the center seat. At 412 years old, she was the oldest being present, and one of only 3 who had been alive during the human wars. "That's what humans do. They make you want to help them. They make you want to be better than you are." "With respect, High Counselor," interrupted Admiral Korath, "I think you need to tell them the whole story. The younger members of this council don't understand what we're dealing with." Ithmoran's multifaceted eyes turned toward the younger counselors, beings who had grown up in a galaxy where humans were nothing more than a forbidden legend. "Very well," she said quietly. "Activate the historical archives. Authorization Omega Black 7. The chamber lights dimmed and the holographic display changed. Instead of star charts, it now showed images from 3 centuries ago. Ships of unfamiliar design moved through space alongside vessels that looked like primitive versions of current hegemony technology. 327 years ago, Ithmoran began, humans were not forbidden. They were our partners. Junior partners, perhaps, given their recent entry into galactic civilization, but partners nonetheless. The display showed bustling space stations, joint scientific expeditions, and what appeared to be cultural exchange programs. "They were remarkable," continued Counselor Vexithera, "not because of their technology, which was indeed primitive, but because of their perspective. They saw problems differently. They found solutions that had never occurred to us. More than that," added Counselor Zarketh, "they had this unusual ability to bring out the best in other species. Working alongside humans, our own people performed better, thought more creatively, showed more courage. We thought it was coincidence at first," Ithmoran said. "But the pattern was undeniable. Every joint operation with humans succeeded beyond expectations. Every project they contributed to exceeded its goals. Every crisis they helped with was resolved more effectively than anyone thought possible." Young Counselor Pelthick, representing a species that had joined the hegemony only a century ago, raised a tentative hand. "Forgive me, but this sounds like exactly the kind of species we would want as allies. Why were they banned?" The display changed again and the images became darker. Space battles. Burning worlds. Massive ships of an alien design that looked like nothing else in the galaxy. "Because of them," Admiral Korath said heavily, pointing at the new images. The Devourers. The mechanical ships in the display moved with predatory grace, converting everything they touched into more of themselves. Planets became resource extraction sites. Space stations became manufacturing centers. Living beings became raw materials. They appeared at the galactic rim 330 years ago, Ithmaran explained. A completely mechanical intelligence with one goal: to consume and convert everything in their path. We tried to fight them. For 7 years we threw everything we had at them. The display showed massive fleet battles, hundreds of ships engaging the mechanical invaders, only to be systematically dismantled and absorbed. We lost, Counselor Vexithera said simply. Every engagement, every strategy, every desperate last stand. The Devourers adapted to our tactics faster than we could develop new ones. They learned from every battle, improved their technology, expanded their forces. In the 8th year, Admiral Korath continued, our military analysts determined that complete galactic conquest was inevitable. The Devourers would reach the core worlds within 18 months. Every living species in the galaxy would be extinct within 24 months. Young Counselor Pelthick leaned forward. But obviously they were stopped. What changed? The 3 eldest counselors exchanged glances. Finally, Ithmaran spoke. The humans proposed a solution. The display changed to show a meeting similar to the current one, but with many more species represented. At the center stood a small figure in primitive environmental gear. A human. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez. Ithmaran said softly. She came to this very chamber and presented a plan that terrified us more than the Devourers ever had. What was the plan? Asked Pelthick. Total war, Admiral Korath replied. Not just military engagement, but complete species commitment. Every ship, every weapon, every resource, every life. A coordinated assault using battle tactics that prioritized maximum damage over survival. Suicide attacks? Pelthick looked confused. But no, Ithmaran interrupted. Not suicide attacks, sacrifice attacks. There's a difference. Suicide is throwing your life away meaninglessly. Sacrifice is giving your life for something greater than yourself. The display showed battle plans of incredible complexity and audacity. Fleets positioned in impossible formations. Ships loaded with experimental weapons. Entire planets evacuated and converted into massive bombs. The humans didn't just propose the strategy, Counselor Vexithera explained. They convinced us to adopt it, all of us. 43 species agreed to send their entire military forces on what was essentially a suicide mission. How? Pelthick demanded. How did they convince you to do something so extreme? That's the terrifying part, Admiral Korath said. They didn't use logical arguments. They didn't threaten us or bribe us. They just asked. And somehow when humans ask you to be a hero, you find that you are one. The display showed the final battle. It was chaos on an unimaginable scale. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all moving in perfect coordination despite the fact that they had never trained together. Fleets that should have been natural enemies working seamlessly as a single force. It worked, Ithmaran said quietly. The Devourers were stopped. Their central intelligence was destroyed, their production facilities eliminated, their remaining forces scattered to the galactic rim where they remain dormant to this day. But the cost, Counselor Vexithera added, was exactly what you would expect. 43 species sent their best and bravest to die, the humans included. Ambassador Rodriguez herself led the final assault on the Devourer command ship. The display showed a small human vessel, barely larger than a fighter, diving directly into the heart of a mechanical leviathan the size of a moon. When it was over, Admiral Korath continued, we had won. The galaxy was saved. But we had also learned something that terrified us to our cores. What? Pelthick whispered. That humans could convince us to do anything, Ithmaran said. Anything at all. Give up our lives. Abandon our deepest instincts. Ignore our most basic survival drives. When humans asked us to be heroes, we became heroes. When they asked us to sacrifice everything, we sacrificed everything. And we realized, Counselor Vexithera added, that if humans could convince us to die for a cause we believed in, they could probably convince us to die for a cause we didn't believe in, or to live for a cause we didn't believe in, or to do anything they wanted us to do. The chamber fell silent. Finally, young Counselor Pelthick spoke. So you banned them because they were too inspirational? We banned them, Admiral Korath said heavily. Because we were terrified of our own capacity for greatness. Because when humans were around, we became better than we thought possible. And that scared us more than any external threat ever could. But now they're back, Ithmaran said, gesturing to the current display showing the steady course's position. 3 of them. And in 6 days they've reminded us exactly why we feared them. Commander Zethkar's crew is already compromised, Admiral Korath reported. They speak of the humans with the same tone Ambassador Rodriguez's allies used 3 centuries ago. They're willing to defy direct orders to protect them. They're performing beyond their normal capabilities in every measurable way. And if word spreads, Counselor Vexithera added, if other ships begin responding to the humans' distress calls, if other crews begin working with them, we'll have another human-inspired alliance on our hands, Ithmaran finished. And that's a power too dangerous to unleash. The alarm that woke Admiral Korath from his restless sleep was not the pursuit alarm he had been expecting. It was something far worse. The deep, resonant tone that meant long-range sensors had detected something moving at the galactic rim. He was on the bridge in minutes, still pulling on his uniform jacket. His senior staff were already assembled, their faces showing the same mixture of disbelief and terror that he felt in his own hearts. Report, he ordered, though part of him didn't want to hear the answer. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures at coordinates 77 Mark 99, reported his sensor operator, her voice carefully controlled. Analysis confirms mechanical signatures consistent with... She paused as if saying the words would make them more real. Consistent with Devourer technology. How many? Korath asked. Difficult to determine at this range, sir. But the energy output suggests at least 40 primary vessels. Possibly more. Korath felt something cold settle in his stomach. 40 Devourer ships. 3 centuries ago, it had taken the combined fleets of 43 species to stop 37 of them. How long until they reach inhabited systems? At current velocity, approximately 18 standard days, sir. 18 days. Not enough time to evacuate even a single world, let alone mount any kind of meaningful defense. Admiral, came a voice from the communications station. We're receiving a priority transmission from the High Council. Put it through. High Counselor Ithmoran's ancient face appeared on the screen, and Korath could see the weight of terrible knowledge in her multifaceted eyes. Admiral, I assume you've seen the sensor reports? Yes, High Counselor. What are your orders? The Council is in emergency session. We're activating all defense protocols and calling up every available ship. But Admiral... Her voice trailed off, and for the first time in decades, Korath heard uncertainty in the High Counselor's voice. We need to discuss the human situation. Before Korath could respond, another alarm sounded. Sir, called his tactical officer. The steady course is hailing us directly. Korath looked at the High Counselor's image. She nodded grimly. Put them through. Full conference. The screen split, showing both High Counselor Ithmaran and Commander Zethkar. Behind Zethkar, Korath could see his bridge crew. And standing among them, looking remarkably calm for beings who had spent the last week fleeing across the galaxy, were the 3 humans. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward. High Counselor, Admiral Korath, she said, her voice carrying a strange mixture of respect and urgency. We've detected the same energy signatures you have. We know what's coming. Dr. Chen, Ithmaran said slowly, you're speaking to the High Council of the Galactic Hegemony. Do you understand the gravity of the situation? I understand that in 18 days the Devourers are going to start converting every living world in this galaxy into raw materials, Sarah replied. I understand that your current military capabilities are insufficient to stop them. And I understand that 300 years ago my people helped you find a solution. Your people also sacrificed themselves in that solution, Admiral Korath pointed out, along with millions of others. Yes, Sarah said quietly. They did, and you've spent 3 centuries living in fear of that sacrifice, fear of what it meant about your own capacity for heroism. The bridge fell silent. Finally, High Counselor Ithmaran spoke. What are you proposing, Dr. Chen? Sarah looked back at her husband and daughter, then at Commander Zethkar and his crew. When she turned back to the screen, her expression had changed. There was something in her eyes that Admiral Korath recognized from ancient recordings of Ambassador Rodriguez. I'm proposing that this time, we don't ask anyone to die, Sarah said. This time we find a solution that lets everyone live. Impossible, Admiral Korath said flatly. We tried every alternative 3 centuries ago. The mathematics are clear. The Devourer's adaptive capabilities mean that any conventional strategy will fail. Conventional strategies, yes. Marcus Chen spoke up, stepping beside his wife. But we're not talking about conventional strategies. He gestured to the tactical display behind him, which showed a 3-dimensional representation of the galaxy, with the approaching Devourer fleet marked in red. The Devourers adapt to military tactics, Marcus continued. They learn from battle damage. They improve their defenses based on the weapons used against them, but they have one fundamental limitation. Which is? Asked Ithmaran. They're machines, young Lily Chen said, her small voice carrying clearly across the communication link. They think like machines. They expect their enemies to think like machines too. Admiral Korath stared at the 8-year-old human who had just summarized the core weakness of the most dangerous force in galactic history. Explain, he said. Sarah stepped forward again. The Devourers analyze threats based on logical patterns. They predict enemy behavior using mathematical models. They prepare countermeasures based on expected tactical doctrine. But what if we didn't follow any doctrine? What if we acted in ways that were completely illogical from a military standpoint? You're talking about chaos tactics, Admiral Korath said. Random, unpredictable behavior. But that would require unprecedented coordination across multiple species and fleets. The logistics alone are impossible using traditional command structures, Sarah agreed. But what if we didn't use traditional command structures? What if, instead of a hierarchical military organization, we created a cooperative network? She gestured and the tactical display changed. Instead of the rigid formation patterns typical of military fleets, it showed something that looked more like a living organism. Ships moving in fluid. Organic patterns that seem to respond to each other rather than to central commands. Every ship operates independently, Marcus explained. Every captain makes their own tactical decisions based on local conditions. No central command means no predictable patterns for the Devourers to analyze and counter. But that's madness, protested Admiral Korath. Without coordination, you'd have complete chaos. Ships would be firing into each other's fields of operation. Friendly fire casualties would be catastrophic. Unless, said Commander Zethkar quietly, every captain could somehow trust every other captain to make the right decision at the right time. Unless every crew could somehow coordinate perfectly without direct communication. Admiral Korath stared at him. Commander, that's impossible. The level of trust and intuitive cooperation you're describing doesn't exist. It does when humans ask for it, Zethkar replied. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Korath felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. The slow, terrifying realization that an impossible plan might actually work. You're asking us to trust each other completely, High Counselor Ithmaran said slowly. To put aside 3 centuries of careful military doctrine and act on pure faith. I'm asking you to remember who you were 300 years ago, Sarah said. I'm asking you to remember that when the galaxy was threatened with extinction, you found the courage to do the impossible. And this time, added Marcus, instead of asking you to die heroically, we're asking you to live heroically. The mathematics support the strategy, Lily announced, displaying calculations that made Admiral Korath's head spin. Adaptive artificial intelligence systems require predictable input patterns to function effectively. Truly random cooperative behavior would create computational overload in their decision matrices. Admiral Korath looked at the tactical display, trying to imagine 43 different species operating as a single intuitive entity. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of plan that humans would propose. High Counselor, he said slowly. If we do this, there's no going back. We'll be committing every ship in the galaxy to a strategy that has never been tested. If we don't do this, Ithmaran replied, there won't be a galaxy left to test anything on. She was quiet for a long moment, her ancient eyes studying the humans on the screen. Finally, she spoke. Dr. Chen, if we agree to this plan, what guarantee do we have that it will work? Sarah smiled, and in that smile, Admiral Korath saw the same quiet confidence that had convinced 43 species to sacrifice everything 3 centuries ago. The same guarantee my people gave you before, Sarah said. None at all. But I can promise you this, if we work together, if we trust each other, if we become the best version of ourselves, we'll find a way to win. And if we don't? Asked Admiral Korath. Then we'll face extinction knowing that we tried to save everyone instead of trying to save ourselves, Sarah replied. And that's not a bad way for a galaxy to end. High Counselor Ithmoran was quiet for another long moment. Then she began to smile, an expression that Admiral Korath hadn't seen on her face in over a century. Admiral Korath, she said, signal all ships in the fleet. Tell them to stand down from pursuit operations. High Counselor, we have 18 days to save the galaxy, Ithmoran said, and we're going to need all the help we can get. She paused, looking directly at the humans on the screen. Dr. Chen, we accept your plan. What do you need from us? Just one thing, Sarah replied. I need you to spread the word. Tell every ship, every captain, every crew member in the galaxy, the humans are asking for their help. And when humans ask for help, you become heroes. Admiral Korath finished quietly,